All right, here we are again. Let's keep talking neurons here. So we're going to talk about communication pathways. Okay, so really we're talking about the nervous system and the endocrine system, how our body communicates within itself. We spent the last couple of days talking about the form and structure of a neuron. So I'm not going to spend too much time here because you can go back and check out the other ones, but check out the direction of communication. Okay, you've got your dendrites that are taking in your information through the soma, cell body nucleus, down the axon, and then out your terminal and terminal buttons. Okay, so just understanding the direction of which the communication is taking place here in your neuron. So here's your nervous system. We're going to talk about two parts to it. The first and the largest part of it is the central nervous system, which is comprised of the brain and the spinal cord. Okay. The brain is your operating center that's going to be able to make sense of, connect, relate, empathize, and essentially take some of your nerves, your nerve messages, and then also play right along with the endocrine system, which we'll get to later. Okay. Your spinal cord is kind of the super highway of your body that is sending those messages from your peripheral nervous system back up to your brain. So your brain can essentially communicate all the way down to the tip of your toes so that you know what's going on around you. And your peripheral nervous system is broken down into two parts as well. You've got your motor neurons and your sensory neurons. So these are your muscles, okay, and your senses. So your central nervous system will connect to all of your muscles throughout your body, and yeah, those are the voluntary and involuntary, or somatic and autonomic. Excuse me. So your somatic nervous system controls voluntary movements: running, jumping, working out, talking. Your autonomic nervous system controls things like breathing and blinking and blood flow and so on. Okay. So you've got your sympathetic division, your fight or flight, which will cue in your stuff like your heartbeat and your priming of muscles in an emergency, and your parasympathetic division that are rest or digest. So your stomach digesting food, um, your uh, ability to pump blood through your body, breathe, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so these are the different tracks that your nervous system has to manifest. And again, they work together. They're not completely separate. They have to. Because the peripheral nervous system are all the nerves that go from your spinal cord out to the rest of your body. These are the nerves that are going to your stomach. So if you have an upset stomach, that's where you're getting the information. To your toes. If you stub your toe and it hurts, that's what's going on. Tips of your fingers, burn your hand, paper cut, etc. Okay, so that's how that all works. So here's another way of looking at it, and I'll let you kind of go to the slides to do this because we just talked pretty much about all this stuff. But this is kind of what you're talking about: your peripheral system versus your central system. Okay. Another interesting way of looking at the central nervous system is with your spinal column and the way that it's labeled and identified. So here you have your spinal column with your cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and sacral division of your spine. Okay. So here is what is enclosing your spinal cord. So thinking of all those different, you know, C5s and T5s and L1s and 2s and so on, understanding that if you have an accident and you break one of these, right, and you happen to sever that spinal cord, you want to think about all the nerves. And you can see here the functions affected, right? All the nerves that you're cutting off communication with. So if you happen to, let's say, for instance, take out a T3, okay, you're losing trunk stability, temperature regulation. You can really impact, obviously, as we move lower, some of your sexual reproductive organs, hip mobility, knee extension, foot motion, all that to your bladder activity. Okay. So think about what those couple inches of each one of those uh, discs in between each part of your spinal column, how many nerves are then branching out from there? When you think about those types of injuries, what you would be losing, okay, and the communication systems that you would be losing, right? There's a really cool 40 Days episode where they talk really specifically about spinal cord injuries. And if I can find it on the internet, I might put it on there. But it's very interesting talking about the same type of situation. Okay. So here's your parasympathetic versus your sympathetic nervous system and kind of where it all takes place from the brain all the way down kind of your back and what it works with anywhere from your reproductive organs to your bladder to your breathing and to your heart. So again, I'll let you check out the slide and you can kind of look at each one of those and kind of get a sense for the depth along your central nervous system that these would be connected to. Okay, so this is what we were talking about before. Those who have had injuries with these two very famous ones, Christopher Reeves, Stephen Hawking. But this would, again, in class typically be continued with discussion on some of those types of injuries and so on. This is an exhibit from the, this is part of the exhibit, of the bodies exhibit that came to COSI. I don't know, it's probably like, almost a decade ago now. But these are nerves that have been essentially mummified. So here is a body that was kind of given to science, post mortem, and to do this, they essentially stripped away bone and flesh and muscle and everything else. But it's super interesting to see the intricate system that we're looking at. You got your brain, and then you've got your spinal column running right down the center. Then you also see these really thick nerves that are running out. And again, they're not all that big, right? Many of them, as we were talking about, are very, very, very small that were not able to be mummified. But you can also see the ones kind of running from your hip all the way down to your toes, or from your shoulders all the way out to your fingertips. Okay. And how these work, okay, is by sending these messages, you're using, and again, we'll talk more about these probably next week, but you're using these neurotransmitters that are sending messages out into the synaptic gap, that little white area between, the terminal and the dendrite. And they're releasing the different types of neurotransmitters, and depending on what the message is, some fit, some don't. Okay, so if the receptor site takes it and it fits, like over here, a lock and a key, it will excite the next dendrite and off we go. Some of them will be blocked, some of them won't fit, and then those messages will not pass. Okay, so we've got agonists and antagonists. So we're talking about communication. So we've got the agonists. Okay, so agonist drugs, if we're going to be using this analogy for class, and what I usually do on this slide is like medications. Okay, so drugs. So agonist drugs increase the release of neurotransmitters. So it floods the system with them. And then they block the reuptake. So usually they'll go out in the synaptic gap, they'll excite the dendrite, and then they'll come back up so they don't linger, so that the message gets sent and then you're done. These stay there. Okay, and they can mimic some of them. So, for instance, one illegal substance that does this is cocaine. So it floods the synaptic gap with cocaine, blocks the reuptake, so it stays there, right, and creates a really intense motivational type feel where somebody's got a ton of energy. And then you got the antagonists. Antagonists block the release of neurotransmitters, right? And this is caffeine. Okay, this is caffeine. It blocks the release of stuff like serotonin that would make you feel tired. Okay, or excuse me, not serotonin, melatonin. I just went to sleep myself there for a second. And they destroy and get rid of it so that you're actually tired and your body's releasing that, but in your neurotransmitters, in your synaptic gap, that the caffeine, which is the drug, the active chemical in coffee, blocks that. Okay. Here we are again, same idea. So they ride down these synaptic vesicles that kind of pop or get released and let the neurotransmitters into the synaptic gap or the synapse. Okay, synaptic cleft is another way of it has been called. Okay. Here are some different types of drugs that would work in the synaptic gap, and we talk about how, and we will later on when we get to drugs and altered states of consciousness, how they react not only as neurotransmitters but also how they react in your body. Okay, here we go again. I kind of gave you the example of coffee. You've got your neurotransmitter receiving the receiving cell membrane, the receptor site. You see how nicely it fits in there. Okay. And then you've got your agonist, which doesn't totally fit in there, but it gets in there. And then you'll also have antagonists that do nothing but kind of cover it up and block it. So the agonist fits well enough that it is going to send a message still. The agonist is going to completely block the message. You see, it doesn't really fill up the receptor site, but it keeps it from others getting in there to pass on the actual message. Okay. Again, acetylcholine, dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, GABA, glutamate, epinephrine, endorphins, all those various neurotransmitters that we'll end up going over later in our sensation. When we talk about various types of drugs and what they do. Okay. Something to be aware of, and what I really use this slide for, is talking about how all of these same chemicals that every drug, whether it's a prescription or recreational drug, it's all in us already, right? All these chemicals are already in us, and we can, for various reasons, could kind of get to the same effect if we're able to reach certain moods, whether we're overly excited, whether we're sad, tired, and so on. And through being able to control your body and understanding that, you can kind of cut out the need for some of this stuff. Okay. But here we are, we're looking at epinephrine, norepinephrine, so a day not giving a speech, how low those levels are. Immediately after giving the speech, see how high it is, cortisol, blood pressure, heart rate. So all those things that have changed can be changed naturally by your brain communicating with your body and dumping some of these neurotransmitters, these chemicals. And it can also be done, through medication. An interesting thing is we take a look at Botox. Okay, Botox is used to stem the effects of aging, right? To kind of flatten out wrinkles. Botox is actually a venom that comes from a poisonous spider that some people inject into their body to kind of stave off this wrinkling. But what it does, it is an antagonist, right? And it blocks or numbs some of the nerves in the face so that your face does not move like it usually does. Because that's really where wrinkles come from, is from the natural movement of your body kind of creasing the skin. So that's how it happens. It's spider venom. Okay, I'll let you check this out on your own. I'm pretty sure it's in just a link on your page, but you can also go to the slides and get to these. So now we're talking the endocrine system, right? So these are going to be glands. So these glands are going to be different yet similar to our nervous system. So for one, both of them send messages, right? They communicate to your body. The nervous system, as we saw the last time, work really fast, right? Milliseconds to get a message from your foot to your brain. The endocrine system is kind of the exact opposite. Okay, at this point, we've all kind of been through puberty and the length it takes during those early teenage years to kind of have your body tell itself that it's time for changes and so on. It doesn't happen very fast. Okay, most of the messages are sent through the bloodstream, and it's not nearly as quick. Okay. So the pituitary gland, often also called the master gland, sits right in the center of our brain. Okay, um, and it's the kind of control center for the endocrine system. Okay, um, it often releases hormones and directs the function of the other glands to be able to work inside the body harmoniously. Okay, and it is located just below the hypothalamus, again in the almost dead center of your brain. The thyroid gland in your neck. Oftentimes, when you get sick, you can feel it swelling up. Okay, it produces thyroxine, which is important for helping you control your metabolism. Okay, because of that, because metabolism helps to use food's natural energy, it also has a large impact on your daily energy levels and your mood from day to day. Okay, so you can have an issue with a underactive or overactive thyroid where you either burn too much energy, right, and can often become tired and maybe um, overactive, and then you can also have an underactive one where you again will feel very lethargic and sluggish. Then you've got our sexual reproductive glands. Okay, again, and all of these are working together, right? They're all on a feedback loop, communicating one to another. This is also part of why, if you end up with some sort of, you know, cancer, that it can quickly spread to these other glands because of the bloodstream based uh, communication system where they're all kind of linked. So that that cancer can kind of travel because of that. Okay, so here we are looking kind of at the sorry, the differences between them. So again, they both communicate. One uses neurotransmitters. Endocrine system uses hormones. Neurotransmitters are released by the neurons. Hormones are released by the glands. Neurotransmitters travel across the synapse. Hormones travel through the bloodstream. Neurotransmitters are super fast. And hormones travel the circulatory system and they don't go as fast. Neurotransmitters travel along like specific pathways, obviously your glands, and hormones can kind of go all over because they're following your blood. While they do connect with one another, but they can go to the tips of your fingers, tips of your toes, back up. That's why sometimes they can take their time. Nerves, fast, get it done. Endocrine system, sometimes, oftentimes, not that fast. And our brain helps to control both of them, okay? With the things that we're thinking about, with how we behave, with what we do. Okay? And here's another little one I'll let you watch on your own. And then we'll finish up. Oh, we kind of just did that. We'll get a chance. So this was your free response. And we'll get to this later on in a future live session. Okay. This is just an opportunity to kind of see some of the common mistakes. So we'll talk more about that. But there we are, folks. Nerves,